Try to stand. That's for this people on the Zoom.
I think the camera follows you.
Okay, cool. Because sometimes I get all like intense and I pace around like a madman. My name's David and I'm an addict. And I'm an NA member. Like when I say I'm an addict, I'm talking about the disease of addiction. I'm talking about this thing that affects me physically. Like my body likes to go and get one. My body likes to lose a lot of weight. My body gets smoked the fuck out. Mentally, I get obsessions. I get thoughts that override all other thoughts. I get thoughts that compel that body to run and go get one. And spiritually, I become so self-centered, man. Like it don't matter who you are. It don't matter if you're my child. It don't matter if you're baby mama. It don't matter if you're my crippled grandma. I will push your ass out the door, watch you break your hip, and go get one. Like I'm talking about, like that's the stuff I've been sharing about lately. Like I've realized that with 15 years clean, you guys, that I'm still carrying around like not just guilt, but real shame. Not just I did something wrong, but like there's something wrong with me. And there's a difference, man. Look, it's real good to be believed in. Nancy, thanks for asking me to come out. I've been getting asked to share in a lot of places, and I think the only reason is because I can string a few sentences together, and I can share dirty to live clean. Like I can tell the fucking deep, dark, ugly truth about myself, and I think it gives other people permission to be themselves. And like it might give y'all permission to look like I got deep, dark secrets. I got shit that I would never tell anybody. I got shit that maybe some of y'all wrote about in these letters. You know what I mean? I got that stuff, and sometimes I got to get it up off of me. And I found like at this point, man, like I will share this shit from right here. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Like how free do I want to be? But it's good to be believed in. Like thank you for believing in me. I saw something, man. Thank you, Vicente, for kicking it off, bro. You know what I mean? Like I've been right where you're at. I've been right where. How many of y'all have under a year clean? I was just curious. I was curious who were carrying the message to, man. But I was listening to the reading, and I was. I do that. I go, I get intense, you know, right? I get passionate about this stuff. I get excited about Narcotics Anonymous. I get excited about just the idea that maybe I could come up here and maybe my higher power will work through me because this shit ain't my message. Like maybe my higher power will work through me just enough that somebody says, I'm going to try that NA shit. Or somebody says, I don't think I'm going to get loaded tonight, because there might be somebody in here thinking about getting loaded tonight. Yeah. There might be somebody thinking about, I got to call so-and-so who is loaded that's going to get loaded but hasn't told themselves yet. You might be really fucking happy and not know why, because you ain't told yourself you won't get loaded yet. Right? And maybe, that's why I keep going to meetings. That's why I keep going to meetings. That's why I look for the good speaker. That's why I look for the good fucking message. I look for the good quote in the literature. I look for the shit in the book. I keep doing the steps because I need a restoration to sanity with years clean. Like sometimes I got ideas. They ain't good ideas. And sometimes they're the only ideas I got left to work with. And then sometimes I got a sponsor that probably calls me more than I call him, and when I got them ideas, that motherfucker call me, and I'll be like, I'll call that motherfucker later. Because I got a disease that will defend itself in the name of one more. And nowadays, one more could be her, but she ain't no good for me. You know what I'm saying? But I was listening to somebody read, man, and like I noticed we got different people from different fellowships. We talking about alcoholics. We talking about addicts. You know, we talking about these different things. And like I remember being in a sober living facility with like 6 months clean, and I remember my roommate had this shirt that said "Puro Recovery" on it, right? And I was like, "What the fuck is that, bro?" And he said, "Man," he said, "that's about commitment." He said, "That's about commitment." He said, "It's just like when you get a girl, man. You're gonna, like when you grow up, you're gonna stop fucking all these girls and puffing your chest out because you think you badass because you can fuck all these girls, and you're gonna pick one girl and you're gonna commit." And he said, "It's the same way with a fellowship. Pick a fellowship and put both feet in and do it and get a sponsor and do steps and put a pen to paper and serve that group, serve that fellowship, because that fellowship is probably saving your life." But someone was reading, man, and I was thinking about this place. And normally in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, I would not mention the name of another the name of another fellowship as well. I wouldn't mention the name of a treatment center, because what if y'all got kicked out of this treatment center, right? What if y'all got kicked out of this treatment center, and then the person that kicked you out was a staff member, was a member of Narcotics Anonymous? And then what if you was out there and y'all was fucking with some of that fentanyl and shit, you was dying, and someone said, "Oh, let's go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting," and you'd be like, "Fuck them people." Right? So I don't want to mix, like there's a sixth tradition and it talks about cooperation rather than affiliation. Right? Like Narcotics Anonymous cooperates with Fred Brown, right? And I'm going to talk about Fred Brown, man, because I want to say, like, I got a disease. I don't know about y'all. I got a disease that ain't never going away. I got a disease that lives right here. It knows every step I've done. It knows everything I've done when I put pen to paper. It knows every bit of dirty shit that I've shared to get off me, to tell the truth. It knows about all the healing I've done, and it also knows about the fucking crazy ideas I get and how quickly I'm influenced. Right? I got a disease that's progressive and it's fatal. Now, look, we got this place, this beautiful place called Fred Brown's. Never heard nothing bad about it. I've been around for fucking years. I see motherfuckers come out here and transform. But if you got the same disease I got, you got to remember, man, I got a disease that we suffer from a disease from which there is no known cure. It can be arrested at some point, and recovery is impossible. So, look, I'm out there in the mix. I'm out there doing that thing. I'm out there, I'm sick as fuck. I'm out there, I can't stop from going and getting another one. I'm out there lying and gaslighting my girl. I'm out there whooping her ass with my son in her fucking belly, right? And like, I go into treatment, and this disease is arrested at some point, but where's the recovery? You know what I mean? What happens when I walk out of Fred Brown's and I don't know how to live? Right? What happened? Look, I remember, man. I remember getting out of treatment. I remember they said that you're going to discharge soon. And I remember that feeling, that feeling in my gut. I remember fear. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what I was going to do when I put one foot out in front of the other, outside of a treatment facility. I did not know how to fucking live. Because the truth is, I never had a drug problem. I never had a drug problem. I had a living problem, and drugs were the solution. And they were a fucked up solution. It caused me to fuck some shit up. So look, man, I wanted to bring that up, man. I wanted to bring that up because, like, that's why a place like Fred Brown's brings these fellowships in here. We're coming in here, like we're cooperating with Fred Brown's, and we're coming in here and we try to share a message of hope that, like, an addict, right? Any fucking addict can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. right? I need to know that when I get out there and she isn't cooperating, when the boss isn't cooperating, when shit gets difficult, when somebody gives me an opportunity to cut some corners and do some fucking foul shit. I need to, look, I need to know that there's a place I can go and I can get tapped in and hear a message of hope that like maybe there's a way for me to not end up back here if I'm lucky. And I could look around and I could tell, Brad, I could look around and I could tell like some of us have walked on them fucking yards, man. You know what I mean? Like I got 3 CDC numbers. I know what we're talking about. You know what I mean? I know about them places. I remember coming out of treatment, man, and I remember they said, "Oh, you're gonna go to your..." Man, let me back up. It's funny. I'm talking about my son right now. My son just texted me while I was standing out here, and I don't know what he wants, but he don't ever just text me, "Dad." The text message said, "Dad," and I'm standing out there and I want to cry. You know what I mean? And like I remember coming out of treatment, man. I remember being in sober living, and they said, "Oh, you're gonna go to one of his open houses, right?" And I'll tell you what, I made that shit all about me. Because I didn't even know how to interact with normal people. I'm from the street, homie. I'm from the street. I've been on them yards. I've been running streets. I've been selling dope. I've been doing all them things. You know, I don't know about y'all. I remember them times when I've been up for days at a time, and like I would be trying to fit in, and I'd go into like a Starbucks, and I'd see a guy in there with his family, and I would just be like, man, what a sucker. And then I would immediately be followed by envy and what is it like? What is it like to have that? What's it like to have like people that you love in your life and connections and material gifts and conveniences and stability and commitments that you follow through on and be able to keep them? Shit. Oh man, look, I don't know about y'all, man. I don't know how you got loaded. Yeah, man. What was I gonna say about my kid, man? Dad. I don't know. Look, man, I'm gonna go back in time now. Y'all want me to share for a little while. But yeah, shit, man. I remember I used right over to the Pedro thing too. So I'm gonna share where I'm at, man. I'm gonna share where I'm at. I've been tripping, man. I suffer from anxiety in the last few days. My anxiety been whooping my ass. Like whooping my ass, and I don't need any big event or anything I gotta be tripping on or anything like that to suddenly get tightness in the chest and in my throat and like increased heart rate and shortness of breath and just to be fucked up. And this shit's been like running me for like 5 days, and I decided I lied to my boss because my boss is a dick, and I like self-care, right? Like in the name of self-care, like do I recommend like sometimes my sponsor says sometimes you got to do the wrong things for the right reasons. And I went to a therapist today, second time since I've been clean, right? And I went to a therapist, and she started asking me my life story, like the deep, the dark, the ugly. She started asking me about my parents, and I said my parents met in group therapy. And I said my first memories were being in the projects in a place called Carmelitas in Long Beach, similar to these places over here. I think they're the Jordans, right? Is that what it's called? Anyways, look, man, they're similar to them places. And I was 6 years old, and I remember seeing my dad cry on the phone, begging my mom to come back. And I remember I didn't understand why he was giving so much power to this other human being, right? And I didn't know why she was gone, and I missed her too. And I remember she would come and she would pick me up in this old 67 Nova, and I was a little boy, and I'd get in the back and we'd go hang out at the malls because she liked to go in the malls. But she didn't really want too much to do with me, maybe, because we'd get to the mall and she'd be like, meet me back here at 2 o'clock. And I'd run around in the mall at like 8 years old, 7 years old, right? But that's before stranger danger, right? I'm old, you know, right? And then I remember I wanted her back so bad. And then I remember my dad and we were at my grandmother's in Carmelitas in the projects. And I remember being a little boy and I would go in these empty buildings. There's empty buildings, broken windows, spray paint, dank, stained, dirty mattresses, paraphernalia, Playboy and Penthouse pictures on the walls, paraphernalia, and like the leftovers of like people that were living like we lived. And I remember like being a little boy and seeing that, and I remember something said, warning. And I didn't fuck with it until much later. But I remember that. I remember feeling that energy that we all volunteered to be a part of when we got loaded, especially if we're in them streets and in them ghettos and them places where we do something strange for chump change, those places where we pay a high cost for some low living, right? And like I remember being introduced to that, and then I remember my dad and I, we moved down to the lower east side of Long Beach, and he got this little paid job throwing LA Times newspapers. And I remember he would go out in the night, he would throw newspapers, and I was in the second grade, and I found a school where they didn't bully me. I found a school where they didn't pick on me because of my skin color, because I was already wondering what was wrong with me, right? I found a school, I found this place, and I got really comfortable. I found this routine. And I remember waking up one morning and my mom and my dad were on this fold-out bed that was in the living room, and they were naked. And I remember something said, morning. And don't get me wrong, I love my mom, man. I love my mom. But like I got to experience being raised by somebody that's working with a lot of like bipolar stuff, and the bipolar stuff exacerbated mom's depressions. And I remember living in a dark household. And I remember he couldn't handle her, and she'd be like, get the fuck out of the house, and she would hide in the room. And what ended up happening, whether it was their intent or not, we know it was not, is they spit me out into the streets. And they spit me out in the streets, and the streets raised me because mom didn't want me in the fucking house. And I remember I started to smoke a little bud. I went to all them schools, and they bullied me, and they bullied me, and they bullied me, and then I learned how to fight. And then I started smoking a little weed, and I started to fit in, and I started to hang out. I started to hang out with them kids, right? I started being comfortable in them places, and I used. And I remember crawling in windows and burglarizing houses and seeing people shot over weed money. And I remember and I hadn't even moved to the music that made me dance yet. You know what I'm saying, right? I was already on a roll. I was already going to places like Los Padrinos, and I'm going to these places, and I'm ditching school, and I'm already becoming a little racist. I mean, I came into Narcotics Anonymous, and you know, it was like, how high is the grass? And if you weren't white, you weren't right. I was politicking. I was indoctrinated, man. And like there were periods where in my life that I was so indoctrinated that the hate was real. And then there were periods in my life I was like, what the fuck are these hypocrites even talking about? And I remember and I remember I used, and I remember being 15 years old, and they I'm talking about, I was running BC, BC, before crack, man. And I remember, they taught me how to rock this stuff up, and I remember selling to old guys that had careers, that cocaine was glamorous, and they didn't know that crack cocaine is not glamorous, and like, hey, let's check check this out. Let me sell you this. And I'm talking about, hey, look, and I'm talking about like what I was addicted to, what I didn't know is my parents were so busy tripping on each other that I didn't get the approval that I wanted. I didn't get the approval that I needed, was should have been designated for me as a child. I didn't get stewardship. I didn't get love. Man, selling drugs made me feel loved. Y'all motherfuckers made me feel like a rock star, man. When are you going to be here? Tomorrow. When are you going to be here? 15 minutes. Turns into tomorrow. We got to rob this guy. We got to rob this dude when he gets here. And then you pull up and it's like, bro, we're so glad you're here. Like I'm talking about, like, look, I was addicted to the lifestyle, man, and so that went on for years. It went on for years. I found, look, man, I don't usually talk about like Narcotics Anonymous. I don't need to tell you like what drugs I did, but y'all, most of y'all are new, man. It's fresh. You get it, like you get it, man. You know what I mean? And like I found methamphetamine, and I never stopped, man. 25 years of that shit. Jails, institutions, prison. I'm talking about like they said, we harm many people, but most of all, we harmed ourselves, right? And like I've been sharing about this because I'm trying to get it up off of me, man, because I really realize I feel like there's something wrong with me even still. I realize that like the 12 steps aren't even really, they're for me to find freedom for action of addiction, and they're for me to make a better place in this fucking world for you. Yes. It don't matter who you are. If you're a part of my life, my job is to create safety because I never felt safe, especially if you're a woman. And that's my guilt talking. Like that's my, I'm talking about baby's mama will gaslight her, whoop her ass, whoop my son in her belly. I'm talking about like push my mom out a door, break her arm. I'm talking about slam a door. When I think grandma's out of it, break her hip. I'm talking about every time, like it says, what did we do with our guilt? Well, certainly we felt bad, but what else? Like every time that shit happened, I had to go use more drugs to deal with the shame, to deal with the guilt. But I didn't have a 7th step in my life. I couldn't humbly ask a God of my understanding remove these defects of character. So my I'm sorry's were the most counterfeit amends you can imagine. Thank God for this 12-step thing, man. We'll talk about that, right? And so I used, man, and I used, and I remember in I think it was '89. I'm gonna share about this, man. Like in like '89, I was back in the projects. I was at grandma's. I was 21 years old, something like 21, yeah. I was 21 years old, and this little girl ended up at my door, and she had a little baby, 6 months old, and she had been abused, and I took her on as my girlfriend, and I was raising her daughter, and then she ended up pregnant, and we had turned my grandmother's in the projects into like this fucking haven of criminal fucking behavior. I had gang activity in the pad. I had lots of guns. I had like lots and lots of narcotics. I had lots of addicts, and I had grandma up in the bedroom, like hid out, like, hey girls, take care of grandma. Grandma ended up in police raids, the whole thing. But during that time, she got pregnant, and I had surrendered to a little bit of sponsorship because one of the people that they call the big homies, remember the big homies? One of the big homies said, you know, if she's pregnant, then she decides what to do with the child. And I was like, okay. And I wanted to keep the baby. Who knows what that baby would have been in for if we had kept her. And she said no, she wanted to put her up for adoption because she wasn't down to try to make the changes. And so next thing I know, I'm licking my eyebrows, pop locking at a fucking Winchell's donut shop at the little tables outside, and I'm signing papers to some attorney, and I'm signing my child to be's life away. Right? And then I remember being in the hospital, right? I remember being in the hospital, and I remember she was in labor and she's like, it's coming. And I remember like rolling her into a hospital room, and I remember yelling at doctors, and I remember her holding my hand and gripping my hand, and I remember like looking between her legs and seeing this crazy thing called birth, and I see this ugly thing like appear, and then I hold her and I fall in love. And I like I had never experienced what it's like when your heart swells with love for another fucking being. I didn't know what that was like until that moment. I gave her a name, and then the next day we handed her to strangers, and I never saw her again. And I used and I used and I continued to use. I did a few jail stints. I did a couple prison terms. I did all that stuff, right? And then in '99 I paroled. So that's 10 years later. In '99 I paroled. We didn't stay in touch with the parents because they sent me a picture, and when they said they changed her name like a child, I ripped up the letter and threw it away and said I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And I like Vicente talked about like denial, right? All these years, these are the ways I behaved, and I had no idea that there was anything wrong with me. I didn't know there was anything wrong with me. I was so busy disassociating and escaping the way I felt about myself that I always thought it was the rest of the world's fault. What a raw deal I'd gotten, right? And I remember in '99, I remember paroling with this thing they called an N number. And I had an N number, it's a narcotic number with the CDC. And I remember paroling, and I remember I put one foot into Narcotics Anonymous. And I ended up at a sober living here in Pedro, and I got a sponsor, and I started going to meetings, and I bought the step working guide, and I went to his little step working guide meeting, but then I got a job. When we talk about social acceptability doesn't equal recovery, right? I'm gonna tell you what, man, when life gets good, I probably need this program even more than when life gets bad. Because when life gets good, I got an ego that tells me it's all good. I got an ego that tells me I don't have a disease. I got an ego that tells me I don't need to check in anymore. I got this. I got this, right? So that's exactly what happened. And I stayed clean for a little while. It was almost like I had maybe a spiritual bank account. Maybe I had done something right because I was able to stay clean for like a year and a half. And then when I got loaded, I controlled that shit for a little while. Shit, come on, right? And then and the next thing I know, man, there's a story behind it, but like the house burned up and I ended up in a hotel, and I didn't have 12 steps, so I had what we call triggers. We do 12 steps, so we eliminate those things called triggers, right? So like I had these things called triggers, and as soon as I got in the hotel, that was it. I'm calling the homies. And then my son, the one that texted me and said, Dad, a little while, I still don't know what the hell he was. I don't know, but I love it when he says Dad. One of the reasons I love it when he says Dad is because he lives with another dude that he calls Dad. That's another story. Prison terms will do that. You miss out on a little life, right? So look, man, I started to use. I ended up in that hotel, and I met baby number two's mama, right? And the first words she ever said to me were, "You be selling that shit?" And she was bad. No, but I always have it, right? No, but I always have it. And like, look, I see you. I guess I better get clean, right? So look, man, right? Look, so. I did her wrong, man. Like I did her so wrong, man. I didn't know how to live, man. I didn't know how to live like I hurt her. I was so dishonest. I gaslight her. I physically hurt her, right? I hurt her with my son in her belly. And I remember she tried with me and she tried with me and she tried with me. And then I remember like she got clean and I remember wearing this thing called Wizinator because she told on me and I would go and I would give them fake pee at this other treatment facility and the fake pee stung really bad. It would leak all over me and I'd been up for days and I was trying to beat this system and I would say that bitch is crazy. I come over here and check out the pad, like I got everything's childproof and everything's good for this kid. You know what I mean? You know, she's the one that tried to kill herself. You know, right? I was ruthless, right? And shortly after, I ended up doing another prison term. Now I got out from that prison term. I paroled, and then I told myself the same lie: I'll get a job. And I'll be clean, right? I'll get a job. I'll get my son back in my life. I tell you what, man, look, something happened, man. I got out and I went to baby's mama's new husband house, who my son was calling dad. And I went over there. I'd been out about 2 weeks and I didn't know anybody that was clean. And I went to that house and my son didn't recognize me. And then I bounced him around on my lap, and he started to have a little fun. He's 5 years old now. We missed out on 3 years, and we got on the floor, and we started playing with Hot Wheels, and something clicked because Hot Wheels was our thing, right? Something clicked, and me and my son, we connected. Right? And then I went out the door and I tried to do an online job application and I got so frustrated because, again, I don't have a drug problem, I got a living problem. I didn't know how to do an online job application. I got so mad, I got so frustrated. Everybody I know is loaded. And next thing I know, I'm telling the homie, if you don't get me loaded, someone else will. And he's like, all right. Next thing I know, I'm on one. Next thing I know, I'm getting general relief. I'm getting gangster relief. I'm in a welfare hotel on Pacific Coast Highway. I'm 41 years old. I'm on a skateboard. I'm going from one side of Long Beach to another. I'm getting with this little girl, hoping she'll load the pipe, hoping she'll fuck me, get back to the hotel when she did it, and I'd hurt myself with Vaseline and dirty magazines, and I look at these dank, dirty walls, and I crawl up under the holes in the mattresses, and I'd look for old crack pipes or whatever the fuck else I could find, and I'd start to feel self-pity, and I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with me? How did I get here? Why is my life like this? I'm a good guy. What the fuck? Do I leave money? Yeah. So I called a friend and I ended up in a treatment facility, right? And I remember I went out with a bang. I got as high as I could get before I went in there, and I got in. Like I was directing traffic. I was doing the whole thing, man. And like I got in there, and I was right on the main street in Long Beach where I used to get loaded, and I kicked it with the homies, and I embellished the truth, and I lied, and I told war stories. And I fit right in, and I didn't know then that was actually good for me, because I remember the last time I was clean, I would be around people, they would be talking about their jobs and their careers and their pensions and their wives, and I wanted to crawl out of my skin because I had nothing to offer to the conversation. I didn't know nothing about any of that. I wasn't prepared for any of that. I wasn't prepared to talk about recovery. I needed to be around people that were starting fresh, that were starting new, that were raised by the streets. But they were on a mission to recover, right? And like I remember I was talking, you triggered some stuff with me, Vicente. Like I remember being scared. I was scared to get out of there, and I remember I better go into a sober living, right? And I remember going into a sober living, and I remember I was still real racial, and I remember this guy, my friend D, man, I'll please say a prayer for D. I'm gonna blow his anonymity like a motherfucker, man, because he blows it himself. And like, say a prayer for my man D, because my man D is on the streets and he's about fucking 60, 70 pounds underweight, and I go and I feed him now, and we're tempted to knock his ass out with some tranquilizers and detox him. We're talking about some drastic shit, but D was like this black dude with braids. And he'd pull up in the alley and he'd pick me up for a meeting, and he's a black guy and I'm a white guy and I got all this leftover racial shit with me, and he would get out of the car and he would give me this big long, what we call a Narcotics Anonymous hug. And he would give me this big long hug in the alley, and I would think, somebody's gonna see me. And you know what, man? And then I would take a deep breath and I would lean into it and I would let that motherfucker hug me. And then he took me to a meeting, man. He took me to a meeting, and I heard my sponsor, like he's my sponsor today. I heard this guy, this really good-looking, light-skinned black dude, and he was sitting there, and he was talking about like before he started using drugs, how he was a little boy and he used to try to get a swerve on with his dog. And I was like, damn, bro. Like, I never tried to get my swerve on with my dog. But look, like something about the freedom that came, that like the freedom, like the ability to be himself in front of y'all, right? Like I don't know. I wanted that. I wanted that. I wanted to be able to just be me, man. I wanted to be able to be me, man. And I was like, oh, man, he's a black guy. I need to work on that, right? Next thing I know, I'm going into Watts all by myself, going to meetings. And they would hug me. Be like, damn, y'all motherfuckers hug me? You know what I mean? Right? And look, and I started doing steps, man. I started doing steps, and I started accumulating time, and I remember I was in that sober living. I stayed in sober living for 5 fucking years because I'm afraid of me. I'm afraid of me. Still, I'm afraid of me sometimes. Right? And I remember I'd been there about 2 years, and this thing started happening. And I'm not endorsing Facebook, has nothing to do with Narcotics Anonymous, but I ended up with this Facebook account, and I ran across some girl. She was fighting fires, running up and down mountains and shit, and her name was Caitlin. And somehow she knew my non-biological daughter that I was raising from the same baby's mama, and I made the connection, and I was like, holy shit, that's my daughter. Right? And I remember making the friend request, and I was like, oh God. I made the friend request, and I shot her the friend request, and she accepted it. And I remember I really got nothing from her for a few years, and then like 2-3 years later, she liked one of my posts, and I ran to the meetings and shit, and I was like, look, my daughter liked my fucking post, and I'd taken the snapshot of it, right? You know, meanwhile, I'm taking my kid to open houses, and I'm still battling out baby's mama because she has every reason not to wonder if he'd be safe with me. And I'm praying for her, and I'm doing a 3rd step with her in it, and all this stuff, all this recovery-based stuff, man. Like, right? And look, man, I want to tell you that same woman whose ass I whooped in the kitchen while she was pregnant. Even just yesterday, like she called me, right, because she feels safer with me talking about some things that affect her than her own husband. And I allow her to do that, man, because it gives me an opportunity to amend some of the behavior that I've done. And like first, I never felt safe in my life until I came into Narcotics Anonymous, and y'all motherfuckers made me feel safe, right? And like I look at the damage I've done, and I know that's what I'm supposed to do is reciprocate that, man. And as of like between 4 and 5 years ago, I got a call from the non-biological daughter, and she said, Caitlin wants to meet you. Caitlin's ready. She wants to meet you. She's got an Airbnb in Venice, and I went to Venice all by myself, nervous as fucking could be, right? And we were all in this house, and an Airbnb pad. And I met my daughter for the first time since handing her to strangers, and we were both really awkward. We didn't know how to act, and Erin, my non-biological daughter, handed us a debit card. She said, "Why don't you guys just go to Tino's and get us some fucking tacos for everybody?" And she also had these 2 little kids, but I wasn't ready for all that. So we went, we got tacos, we started talking, and she's like, oh yeah, but I had anxiety. And I'm like, oh, you have anxiety too? I got anxiety too. And she's like, oh yeah, we grew up, did a lot of growing up in Malibu, and we'd be catching waves. I'm like, you catch waves too? And she's like, yeah, I was stoked. I was like, oh, you're stoked too? I'm stoked too, right? What? That's sick. Like we had the same language, we had the same lingo. You could see that she was my fucking daughter, and I remember I didn't even ask her about the kids. I just didn't feel ready. Part of it is just I got to make peace with the fact that I'm fucking old, and right, and then we parted ways that time. I'll end it with this, man. Like a couple months later, man, I called some Narcotics Anonymous members. I called some of my people, man, and we got together and we had a beach day. And she lives in Bishop. It's 3.5 hours away, man. And she brought the kids, and I was prepared. I bought the kids little body boards, and I was like, dude, there's going to be 2 to 3 foot waves, perfect size. I'm going to take these kids, and I'm going to show them how to bodyboard. And I took this little boy. His name is Wyatt. I was like, Wyatt, that's hard. And I was like, I'm going to take Wyatt out in the water, and I'm showing him how to duck dive and go under waves and get waves and paddle, and I come out of the water, man, and there's this little fucking girl, man. Her little girl's name is Lacey, and she's like, Grandpa Dave, can you sit with me? Aww. And then she's writing I love you in the fucking sand and shit, dude. Like, you know what I mean? And like I say all that to say is that like we come into Fred Brown's saying I need to quit drugs. Right. I need to quit drugs. I need to quit fucking shit up. I'm desperate. I'm tired of using it against my will. I'm tired of not having a choice, man. But like, this shit is big, man. I want to encourage, man. I don't usually share at people, but I just want to say, like you can't lose by doing 12 steps, man. You can't lose by I don't give a fuck, man. You go do that other fellowship if you want. It works. It's fucking magical shit. But I'm like, look, put an insurance plan on this thing. That's right. Because I could lose the power to choose real quick. Thanks for letting me share.